Welcome back to Thinksipwrite, and Roberta's back again. So, you know what? I'm going to try to figure out when you're just going to ditch me and leave me hanging. You get everybody watching all these episodes.
We should just make this like a regular thing.
We should. Right? We should. We can't call it Think About This.
If you guys think so, give it a thumbs up.
The thumbs up.
It's fun, right?
Yeah, it is. Well,
and now, look at this. We don't have to ghetto up our
I know.
way to hold the thing anymore.
Well,
you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got it at Michael's. This is not a paid advertisement, but I did get my tripod at Michael's. They do sell this, and it's amazing. It's like a 7-in-1 stick.
I know. Just think of the many uses.
Stop it. No, it's a tripod. It's a selfie stick. You can put your camera on it. You can do like all these crazy things on it.
You're so serious when you say it.
I can't help that I have expressions. I have a lot of expressions.
How much did they pay you do you want to just say the name brand and everything for that?
Oh, I don't know the name brand, but I did get it at Michael's.
Oh, okay. So you ready to talk about what the subject is? Okay. So we're going to talk about the Sphinx, and not just the Great Sphinx.
Oh, no.
But what?
What did I do with my notes?
Okay. You call these notes? Who even reads this? This is like Chinese.
It's my little notes. Hey, it's about having a conversation with the people. Okay?
Oh, wait, I get it. Because we're talking about the Sphinx, and the Great Sphinx is in Egypt, and you wrote in hieroglyphs for this. Is that...
No, but I feel like you don't need a freaking...
Well, I need
a storybook.
I need to
you
be
just
thorough.
need notes and have a conversation and
these
go
are
with
notes.
it. I mean, we're not doing a 20-minute video.
You know how they end up.
It's not going to be
Roberta
20
starts
minutes.
talking, and then she gets me talking.
Right, and this is how many notes I have, and I can still do that, and you have all this.
I have stuff outlined. Get out of my face. All right, fine. You start then.
If this is your show.
It's ours now,
It's your
apparently.
name.
Apparently. Well, whatever.
Go for it.
Anyway, there's Sphinx all around the world, and the reason I decided to talk about it is because in my book, Blood the Second Helping, I have a piece in Egypt, and it revolves around the Sphinx.
You do. Yeah. I was just saying you do.
Why did you say it like that?
I don't know. You do. I just thought about it. I'm like, oh my God, he does.
Do you remember what happened in it?
There's something with a tunnel underneath. Is it underneath the Sphinx?
There's a hidden passage underneath the Sphinx.
Okay.
And of course it goes from there. But that's, so I was always fascinated with ancient Egypt, and, I decided to do some research on the Great Sphinx, but there's Sphinx all around the world. So you want to talk about some of the things that you have, and then we'll just ping back and forth?
No, this is your show. You start.
Okay. Well, for anybody who doesn't know,
a book.
For anybody who doesn't know, the Sphinx is a mythological creature with a human head and the body of a lion. And it dates back to Greek mythology, and actually when they built the Sphinx, the Great Sphinx in Egypt, they actually didn't have a name for it. Mm-hmm. A name for it didn't come up until almost 2,000 years later. They didn't actually have a name. They don't know why they built it, other than the positioning of the sun when you stand near the temple. It kind of rises and sets in a certain way where it seems like the eternal life, like life, death, and rebirth.
Right. And the biggest one is in Egypt.
Yes, the Great Sphinx.
Isn't it like 224 feet or something like that?
Somewhere between that and 260 feet.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. I mean, it's the biggest one. But also, Greek mythology has Sphinx.
Well, that's where it comes from.
But their Sphinx actually are a woman, is it a woman's head? It's a woman's head, a body of a lioness, and it has like angel wings and like a tail.
Yeah, they
so it's
sometimes
like
the tail's like a snake tail.
Right.
It gets confused sometimes with, there's a creature in mythology called a chimera.
Okay.
It gets confused with that sometimes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's many different Sphinx. I know in China there's actually a lot of Sphinx around that are primarily female. From the statues I've seen, and I'll do a slideshow at the end.
Does it have to do with anything with females?
Well, I don't know. It depends.
Whatever. I say I'm evil. I don't know. I believe that, right? But also, I don't know, like the Sphinx in Egypt, the big one is Giza. Am I correct? Which one's the really, really big one?
The great Sphinx.
Right, the huge one.
The Giza
but there's
Plateau.
other Sphinx in Egypt.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. The big one with the nose that's fallen off.
Yeah. Now, yes. Do you know that actually was caused by weather and erosion, but also vandalism?
Right, but they used to say it was the Neapolitans, or was it? Was it that? Am I correct with that? That started the war on that, but it was actually the Turks that actually did that.
Yes, the Turks.
So yeah, there was this whole big like.
Well, and a guy went in there with his army, and he basically defaced it because he didn't believe in the religious specifications of it and why it was there.
But it had a crown too. And
they believe it did because there's a piece on top.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a hole on top, and I actually addressed that in the book, where they believe something set at one point, and they don't believe. They think it might be a crown. They also believe at one point that it was painted.
Yes, I heard that, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Did you see the colors?
Yes, the vivid colors. The head was like red, and the body was like blue and yellow.
Yeah.
How cool is that? Like, that thing is huge. Yeah. That's one of the places that I have on my bucket list that I really, really, really would love to go to. I had my cousin who went years ago. I mean, I'm talking like 20 years ago probably. And he said, I mean, it's unexplainable. When you're next to those, like, pyramids, you just don't realize how huge they are.
Yeah.
And how it can be man-made. To me, until this day, I'm still skeptical about if it's man-made. I mean...
Well, they said that...
how long did it take for them to make the pyramids? I know we're not talking about that, but...
Well,
like,
I am going to do an episode about pyramids.
Okay.
But I don't know how long it took them to do that off the top of my head.
And how about the Sphinx, then? The Sphinx, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, but it wasn't built the way the pyramids were.
But the body is blocks. It's huge... blocks.
The body was actually carved mostly out of limestone. In a quarry that was dug out, they found this giant chunk of limestone, and it was mostly carved.
And they just built it from that?
Yeah, and most people believe that the Sphinx is solid, that there's no chambers inside it. But there's also a lot of people that believe there's chambers underneath of it, and
well, they did say
caverns.
that 90 feet under there is
like a drainage,
right,
like a river,
right.
river.
That stuff fascinates me. I'm just so fascinated by those things. I remember being a kid and I wanted to do something like that.
Yeah.
About the underground.
Yeah, well, did you know that they don't think that the Sphinx was actually completed, and maybe that's where the crown comes in.
Really?
Yeah, they found
How much more would they add to that thing? That thing is huge.
Well, they found 3 large blocks not far from it, and they believe that workers were carrying the blocks there because not far from where those 3 large blocks were in the river, they found an old, kind of like a lunchbox with a container that they thought maybe they had water or beer in, which at those points it was
a lunchbox.
Well, that's what they claimed. The guy who discovered all this, he claimed it was kind of like I guess they had lunchboxes back then. I mean,
what kind of lunchbox would it be?
I mean, how else would you carry your food? You had to have something to transport it, right?
Well, from what I heard, when I was doing a little bit of the research that I did, is that they actually fed a lot of these men that were doing this a lot of meat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did you read that? Like a lot of protein, like lamb.
They needed
and
to
like,
in order to keep.
Well, I figured probably all of those men that were doing all these things probably needed that. You know.
Well, on that note, they found a lost city near there, and it was about the size of a few football stadiums.
A city?
A lost city.
Really?
And in the center of it, they had these chambers, and originally they thought they were barracks, but then they found the carcasses of like baby calves, and they think that this was like where they held the livestock to feed the people.
You figured this was where the Sphinx and the pyramid, that was like the kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Area.
Yeah.
So obviously there were little town, not even towns, little like villages, right, around there.
Well, this was
It probably wasn't even a city. It was probably a village.
well, this was big enough where it held anywhere between 1,600 and 2,000 people.
Wow, no, that's bigger than a village then.
And they said that there's a possibility that there was a second floor, and if there was a second floor, it could have held almost double that. So
In the little city area.
Yeah. Now they also found another settlement close to there where there were 600 people living, and they believe that they were like upper class people who were working on it. And they think that
Upper class people? Because usually it was the lower class people that worked.
right, but the upper class people that were overseeing the lower class.
Oh, like
Like,
the
it was-
soldiers or whoever.
They don't know who actually built it, whether it was Khafra, although his temple's right there.
What's the other one? Horsis?
I have to.
Orsis?
Osiris?
Yeah.
Orisis?
Whatever. I had a couple glasses of wine. Leave me alone.
Yeah. So
Whatever.
So while they were putting orifice on there, yeah. But there's a temple. They built a temple right nearby to worship it, and the
I
temple's.
swear, sometimes things just. I was good in history.
I know you were.
I really was. I actually was really good. This was, I'm not going to mention how many years ago, but it was a very long time ago. That was one of my favorite subjects, was history.
Yeah.
Like, my friends would always go, ew, history, why do you like history? It's so boring. But I thought it was interesting.
You know, it's funny. In school, I never really liked history because I was bored out of my mind. My history professors were just so boring.
Oh, God.
I love history. I mean, that's what I write all
my
my
one
books
history
on.
teacher, 10th and 11th grade, he was like the best history teacher, hands down. But anyway, Sphinx are supposed to be worshipped, like kingdom, like, that there's a king there. They're praising,
Yeah, and that's what this temple near the Great Sphinx was built. They found 24 columns, and they found a bunch of little sanctuaries in there. And it's basically right at the base. And I did a lot of research on that, too, for when I was writing that section. But it's really interesting to see some of the things, and so much is unanswered about Egypt in general, but
there's probably so
area.
much more that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, they have found so much stuff underneath the sand. Can you imagine how much stuff is still underneath?
think about the oceans,
Right, exactly. Wasn't there, like, water, like, all around there? Like,
Well, like I said, there's the
Back
underground
then.
river. They believe that there were a few rivers that are not there any longer, or that have since gone underground. But there's no telling. I mean, it's just what they find through research.
right.
Now that's part of the problem, though, with the Sphinx is it's eroding to this day, so they can't really preserve it. So who knows? In another couple hundred
No, I
thousand
hope
years,
to get there
a
before.
couple hundred or 1,000 years.
I hope to get there before,
But you're gonna live for 1,000 years?
No, but I'm saying I would like to get there. I would love to see our kids would love that.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
who wouldn't
Forget
want to
the kids,
see
I'm
that?
gonna go.
Who wouldn't want to see? It's fascinating, though.
It is.
It is fascinating to see that is man-made. Sorry, that is the kid.
Yeah.
He wants to join in the conversation. Well, they are Egyptian cats, so.
They are. They're Egyptian
And that is
mounds,
another
right?
thing. They worshipped these cats.
Yeah, well, I actually want to get into Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology in one of them too.
Yeah.
Because I think I did an episode in season 1 of Thinksipwrite about Greek mythology, but I do want to get into Egyptian mythology because
Oh, you did, yeah.
that came into play a lot
Yeah.
too. But it's fascinating. They're all around the world. I'll never forget. I was talking about the Never-Ending Story,
Yes.
and I think in that movie. So I don't know if it was Atreyu, but he was going down this. He had this test to pass, and he had to pass through these 2 sphinxes. And if you didn't have like a pure heart or whatever it was, you would die. and they basically fired these beams out of their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first time I remember seeing a Sphinx in a movie. And there's been quite a few movies and
Now,
books.
when you were little, you didn't watch like the History Channel and stuff like that?
No, I did. But
I was
I'm talking
obsessed
about
with
in
documentaries.
fiction. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
was
it.
obsessed with documentaries. Even animal documentaries. I used to watch them all the time. Like animals and like the Egyptian stuff was like my favorite. You know, books on it. Like I've always been obsessed. I've always wanted to do that cruise. Remember we talked about what is that one that we saw that one time? It goes down the river there.
Yeah.
And then it like stops and you like get out. Like my cousin said that that's what he did. He stopped and he went through the different things and.
Well, there's a few of them, but like you said with the cats, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why. I mean, look at the Sphinx. It's a half lion
Yeah.
or lioness.
Right.
You know, if it's male or
Well,
female.
they did have that for their cats too. The cats were way bigger back then too, and they did like
Yeah.
the mummy, like the tombs for
Oh,
their
yeah,
cats and
they
everything.
mummified their
Yeah, because
cats
the
and-
cats were praised as, you know, kings and queen, whatever. Now, were there dogs around? Were dogs not considered?
Well, I know one of the I don't know if it was Horus, but one of the gods was a dog, basically.
He was a dog.
Yeah, but it was like it had like a long snout, or no, maybe it was a jackal. I can't remember. I thought there was a dog, but I could be wrong. But a lot of what they did, the whole thing behind the mystery of the Sphinx is there's a riddle that goes with it, and they believe that the Sphinx told riddles, and you would unlock the immortality of the Sphinx if you knew how to solve the riddle. Now, going back to my childhood again, I remember a game for the Atari. It was called Riddle of the Sphinx, and it was the hardest stinking game I ever played. But for some reason, my brother and I played that for hours. And I never beat it, and I never knew what the Riddle of the Sphinx was until I started researching the book. And of course, it's very simple. It's one of the oldest riddles in the world. Do you know what it was?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, I'm old, but I'm not that old.
I didn't say you were around for it, but I mean, you know. So let's see if you can figure it out. It's basically, and I don't have it word for word, but what walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?
No idea.
A human.
Why do we
Because
walk on 3 legs?
at the dawn of our lives, we're on all 4s.
Right.
Okay. At noon, which is
We're
all
walking
3,
on-
we're on
okay.
2s, and when you get old, you walk with a cane. So you 3 legs.
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean that was back then. You think of how hard
The diseases and
life.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, think about how hard life was. I mean, most people were walking with a cane. You're walking through a desert and everything. So,
Right.
but yeah, we'll put a little slideshow up with different Sphinx from around the world.
Yeah, because there's so many. I mean, like you said, it started in Greece.
Greek mythology is
Brought it
where
up.
the Sphinx
Okay.
came. Yeah, but when the Egyptians built this, they had no connection to that whatsoever. So it wasn't until years later that it was actually named.
See, if I could go back in time, I would go back there.
I'd go to a lot of places.
I mean, no, I think that would be my number one. I would want to see what it looked like back then.
Yeah, I would too.
Like the people and like I'm just obsessed with that. I don't know why that era, like
Well,
that
you're
time.
Miss Foodie. When you want to try some of the food and
Well, the food wasn't as intense or crazy or whatever. I mean, they did a lot of different things. They had to obviously Mediterranean and stuff like that. They have a lot of spices and stuff. But I mean, it wasn't anything like too.
but like the beer
crazy.
and the wine and
Well, they drank a lot of wine.
well, they drank a lot of beer too. Most of the water they couldn't even drink.
Right,
back then.
exactly. So a lot of it was booze. This was their actual like alcohol. What did they give their kids to drink?
They actually
Gave them
when I was looking
Booze,
that
right?
up, they gave them it was beer, but it was like a very low alcohol content because the water had bacteria in it. They would bake the bread,
Yeah.
and then they
because obviously
pour
when
it-
you cook it and you bake it and whatever, it's taking
so they pour the water through the bread.
They probably went through. They probably did the water and they heated it up and then they would take it out, then heat it up. I mean, there was probably a process to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's where modern brewing really comes from, is from way back then. But we'll have to. I still want to do an episode on beer, and
we should do an episode on beer.
And I definitely want to do another episode.
Look, I just invited myself.
I know. So I'm not renaming this though. We're not renaming it after the podcast. This is not going to be.
It should be
Think About This, but it's Think Sip Right, or should it be Think Sip Eat Right?
that would be the eat would be cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of words. It's Think Sip Right.
Oh my gosh, is it? It's like 4 words.
Yeah. Well,
But we'll see.
Tell you. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and cheers.
Cheers.